Hey there. First of all, if you have not yet printed off the fill in the blank version of this PowerPoint presentation and the um, heart coloring sheet, please pause the video now and go do that, and make sure you have some coloring utensils with you as well. It's okay, I'll wait. All right, now that we are ready to go, we are starting the cardiovascular system here, and you will have already seen some of the introductory information about the cardiovascular system in terms of what it does, what the different parts are. And now we're going to get specific in terms of looking at how blood actually flows through the body. So we're going to be flipping back and forth between the PowerPoint and the coloring sheet, and I'm probably going to have to do this in, I'm thinking 3 or maybe 4 sections, just to keep it so that it's a manageable video length for uploading, so that it doesn't take 12 hours to upload. So here we go. First of all, remember that the cardiovascular system is a cycle. There's not a start point and an end point. So what we need to do is just pick some place to start. And we are going to start with the right atrium. Keep in mind that right and left in your mannequin, with you, with other people, it's always the subject's right or left. It's not from your perspective, it's from the perspective of the person that the heart belongs to. So the right atrium is on the right side of your body. I know that sounds like a really strange thing to talk about, but you'd be surprised. So for the right atrium, when blood first enters the right atrium, it is deoxygenated. And by deoxygenated, it doesn't mean that there is no oxygen in the blood. It means that there is low oxygen in the blood. Your blood is never completely without oxygen unless, of course, you're dead, and then you have bigger problems. So low oxygenated blood empties into the right atrium. On your coloring sheet, the right atrium is right here on the list, so you're going to want to color that in. Remember to color in the letters, don't just scribble over. And then here is the right atrium. So what I want you to do as we go through this is, now that I've pointed that out to you, I want you to pause the video and take a minute to color the right atrium. And then when you're ready, come back and we will get started on the next part. So anytime that blood leaves a chamber of the heart, as we talked about before, it has to go through a valve. And the function of a valve is to prevent blood from flowing backwards. So when blood leaves the right atrium, it has to go through a valve. And the particular valve that's associated with the right atrium is called the tricuspid valve. And when blood goes through the tricuspid valve, it goes from the right atrium through the tricuspid valve into the right ventricle. On the coloring sheet, right here is the tricuspid valve. And don't worry about this AV part. That means atrioventricular, so from atrium to ventricle. Now underneath this, there's also this name, the chordae tendineae. The chordae tendineae, it's tendons that are like cords, that are like ropes, and it's the chordae tendineae that help to anchor the valve flaps so that they don't just swing in the breeze. So when you look on the picture, here is, okay, tricuspid valve, 3 parts to it. There are the 3 flaps to the valve, and these structures right here are the chordae tendineae. So I want you to pick a color and color both the tricuspid valve and the chordae tendineae just on this side the same color. I'm not going to tell you what color to use because you all have different resources. Then after that, the next part is the right ventricle. And you'll see in the right ventricle that there are these three hills, these three mountains, and they're labeled letter F, which is actually the papillary muscles that they have associated here with the tricuspid valve. We're not going to separate the papillary muscles out either, so we're going to color all of the right ventricle, including those papillary muscles, the same color. So all of this is the right ventricle. I'm trying to avoid going over top of the chordae tendineae, but it's getting a little sketchy because I'm using the trackpad. I don't have a mouse hooked up. So all of that is the right ventricle. So go ahead and pause and take a moment to color that in. So the way that your quiz is going to work on this is that I'm going to give you this paragraph with all of these fill in the blanks empty, and you're going to have to fill them in. So the way that we're going to study for this is we're going to stop every now and then, and I'm going to have you fill in the blanks. Now, normally if we were in class, I'd be able to actually ask you this in person, but the way that we're going to do it here is I will go through this and you will fill in the blanks when I pause. So for example, I will say deoxygenated blood empties into the, and you need to say to yourself, right atrium. Then I will say, blood then flows through the, pause, tricuspid valve into the blank, right atrium, or excuse me, right ventricle. And then we will move on. And when we do the test, you'll have to fill those in yourself. So from the right ventricle, blood then has to be pumped out. Remember, ventricles are more muscular, stronger, can generate more force than atria. So from the right ventricle, blood is pumped out, and because blood is leaving a chamber of the heart, it has to go through a valve. So in this case, it goes through the pulmonary semilunar valve and into a structure called the pulmonary artery. So the pulmonary semilunar valve, pulmonary means lungs. So this is a valve and this is an artery that's going to be carrying blood to the lungs. So let's take a look at it on the coloring sheet. Let me erase what I already have done here because it's starting to get a little bit crowded here, or at least erase most of it, because I don't want you to get confused. This is the basic version of this program. If I had the upgraded version, I'm sure that I would have more colors. We're just going to have to reuse colors for the time being. Okay, so the pulmonary semilunar valve is right here, and when you look on the picture, the pulmonary semilunar valve is right here. Don't get confused over here. This looks like it says G also, but it's not G, it's G1. So this by itself is the pulmonary semilunar valve. And then blood goes through the pulmonary semilunar valve into the pulmonary artery. Now, technically, this first part right here that is labeled A2 is the pulmonary trunk. It's like the trunk of a tree. It goes up and then it splits into two different blood vessels. So we're going to color A2 and A3 the same colors, just to save colors in the long run. You should not be reusing colors if at all possible. You should be using different colors on all of these. So all of that is what we are going to call the pulmonary artery. even though I'm tossing the pulmonary trunk in there just for giggles and grins. All right, so deoxygenated blood empties into the right atrium. Blood then flows through the tricuspid valve into the right ventricle. From there, it is pumped out through the pulmonary semilunar valve into the pulmonary artery. Well, because this is pulmonary artery, blood travels to the lungs. The fact that this is in white, it is still an underline, but the fact that this is in white means that you are not going to have anything to color on the coloring sheet, but that still is a fill in the blank that you are going to need to know. I'm going to stop here because the next section I want to do all on that other program, and I'm going to need a mouse for that. So stay tuned for that, and you can do it all in one day. It's just it's going to be in different sections. So thank you very much, and I'll be back.